I play smarter. I invest with Morning Line. You build your stable. When they race, you earn. Buy, sell, trade, anytime. Morning Line. Own the game.
Hi everyone, David Aragona and Mike B are here taking a look at the 7th race on Breeders Cup Saturday, one of 9 Breeders Cup Championship events on that Saturday card. It is the Breeders Cup Distaff going the 9 furlong distance for the fillies and mares. And with the Breeders Cup coming up this weekend, there is a lot of handicapping to be done, and you want to do it at DRF.com. Check out our Breeders Cup packages. You can save $38 on the value of everything included in these packages: the clock reports, the betting strategies, the player's guide, and the PPs. Whole lot more. Check out it at shop.drf.com or by using that QR code on screen. Mike, another large field signed on for this Breeders' Cup Distaff. 13 runners were entered in this race, but they've all got a pretty fast filly to beat, and that is the number 8 Seismic Beauty, who is a standout on speed figures, but she is stepping up to face the toughest field of her career.
Yeah, it does feel like maybe this will be the toughest race for her to date. Listen, there's plenty to like about her. I think what you'd probably maybe even like most about her, David, aside from her, gaudy speed figures from her last 2 starts, is this just isn't a really strong division. And so even if this is a tougher race for her, maybe it's only tougher by degrees.
Yeah, it's a division that lost some key players in recent weeks, especially Torpedo Anna, who looked like the early favorite for this race. She bombed her final prep, was retired, so she will not be playing here, and it just makes it a much more winnable spot for Seismic Beauty, whose stablemate Cavalieri, the other favorite for this race, was also withdrawn a couple of weeks ago. So a large field lined up against her. It's not going to be easy for Seismic Beauty, but she is the one to beat and probably the one to catch as we take a look at the Timeform US Pace Protector for this race, because Mike Seismic Beauty has a lot of early speed. There are some other reasonably fast horses in here that figure to keep her honest early, but I think the intention is going to be to get to the front with her, and she's probably fast enough to get there.
Yeah, I don't feel like they'll be looking to concede the lead to anybody else in here. We'll see how some of these other horses decide to play it. Obviously horses like, Gin and Dry Powder, they do have speed, and maybe they'll come out of there being aggressive, trying to make the lead. I think I would also mention that I feel like the 5 Scottish Lassie is in line to get a more aggressive ride this time too. So maybe this pace will get fast.
I'm glad you brought up Scottish Lassie. She's the one that I'm intrigued to see if they get more aggressive this time. We'll talk about her chances when we get to her in the rundown of contenders, but let's begin with the horse drawn on the rail. That is the number 1 Nitrogen, arguably the top 3-year-old filly on the way into this race off a victory in the Grade 1 Alabama this summer at Saratoga. She was the top filly on turf through the first half of the year, but Mark Casse decided to switch surfaces with her, tried the Alabama after an off-the-turf victory and the Wonder again going back to Belmont Stakes weekend, and she won the Alabama, trial older horses in the Spinster last time, Mike, and it looked like she had that race won in upper stretch, and then she just got to gradually drifting out as they came to the wire. She gave away some ground to the winner, Jin, who came back along the inside to beat her. It was still a good effort from Nitrogen. My question to you is, what kind of trip do you envision for her coming from the rail? Because she is a horse that they have kept out of the kickback in all of her dirt races so far.
Yeah, they're going to, I think, be looking to let the favorite clear her, assuming the favorite goes, look to let her clear, and then hopefully she can get to the outside in this race. I think you're right. I think they want to stay out in the clear if they can. Listen, Nitrogen's obviously a really nice horse. I kind of still prefer her as a turf horse. I recognize that she's handled dirt. I still kind of prefer her as a turf horse. I'm on record, I think, several times over as not liking this crop of 3-year-old fillies on the dirt. And I'm going to stand by that. I do not like her last race. I don't think she had any excuse not to win there. And this race is tougher than that one. Hope she takes money in here. I'm betting other horses.
I agree with you, Mike. I think 4-1, the price I set around. I think she'll be around that price is just an underlay on Nitrogen. The number 2, Sarawak Rim. I mean, she's a wild card coming into this race. You don't really know how good she is. She's only run 5 times in South America, races in Argentina. She's won 4 of them, including a Group 1 victory last time. You don't really know what she was facing. We have seen Nacho Correas do this with South American horses where he gets them to the Grade 1 level in the U.S., but typically not in their U.S. debuts, Mike. And this notably will be the last U.S. starter for Nacho Correas, who's retiring after this, going back to Argentina. So some sentimental value around this horse. Just they're asking an awful lot of her in her U.S. debut.
Yeah, it's just really hard to get a read on how good these South American horses are. I guess it's notable too that Irad's going to take them out here. I don't know if that is going to sway people at all. I don't know. I was able to get tape on a couple of her races over there. She looked fine, but it didn't seem like she necessarily had to work that hard to beat those horses. So maybe she just wasn't in the toughest spots in the world. They also were sort of happy to keep her going longer distances too, and I feel like that really played to her strengths.
The number 3, Clico, is another 3-year-old filly in this field. She did earn a Grade 1 victory last time in the Cotillion. We'll take a look at the stretch run of this race because we have 3 runners coming out of this Cotillion back into the Breeders' Cup Distaff. Clico is the gray on the outside, getting up for the victory. Dry Powder battling back inside of her, and there's Scottish Lassie in that purple cap in behind them. She was the somewhat disappointing favorite in this race, but Mike Clico gets the job done. It wasn't the most visually impressive victory. She doesn't really get away from these rivals when she strikes the front in the stretch. And we probably should note the horse that gets up for third in this race was about $1 million to 1 and didn't look competitive on paper. So maybe it's an indictment of the quality of this field.
Yeah, it's just, another one of those 3-year-old filly dirt races that just haven't been strong all year. I think Clico's a pretty nice horse. I do think that, as lightly raced as she is and as progressive as she is, that they could bring her back next year and she could have a really nice year as an older horse. I'm not betting her on Saturday.
The number 4, Scylla, is a horse who concentrated on sprinting for the majority of the past year and a half. They turned her back in last year's Breeders' Cup filly and mare sprint after trying the Ballerina in the summer of 2024, and they just kept on with sprinting after that all the way into this season. She wasn't winning any of those sprint races, but she was running well enough for them to continue on with it. But she is a horse who was just fine handling 2 turns early in her career. She really never improved with the turn back, just kept running her typical buyers in the mid-90s. So they tried to go back to 2 turns last time in the Spinster, and she did lose to both Gin Gin and Nitrogen, Mike, but I thought that she had a chance to get them at the top of the stretch, and Nitrogen just kept drifting and drifting into her path, and Scylla never was really able to pick up the momentum because Nitrogen just kept coming over on her. She never got on terms with Nitrogen, so there was no reason for an inquiry or anything like that, but she altered course back inside, and after the wire, she actually did gallop out best of all, so I think she ran her race last time, and in this distaff where there's plenty of speed signed on, maybe Junior Alvarado just takes her back, tries to make one run, and I think she's good enough to hang with a field like this if she can handle the distance.
I can get behind all that stuff, David. I feel like I would actually like her a lot more if they hadn't run her in the Spinster and this was the race that they were stretching her back out in. Because ultimately, and listen, I can go back and maybe take a second look at that Spinster and maybe I'll agree with you about Nitrogen bothering this horse a little bit. I just didn't think that she ran that well when they stretched on the Spinster last time. I thought overall she was in a good position throughout the race and she just made no inroads in a really slow final fraction of that race. I don't know, man. Again, I like her as a horse. I'm totally behind them trying to turn her back into a 2-turn horse now because I think that could work for her. I wanted her to run better in the Spinster.
The number 5, Scottish Lassie, is another 3-year-old filly taking on Olders here. It'll be her first time facing older company after she was the beaten favorite of the Cotillion that we just showed a little bit earlier. Mike, I thought it was a strange trip and ride in that race because she showed so much early speed when she wired the field in the Coaching Club American Oaks 2 back, and they just took her back right from the start in that Cotillion. She was out of position almost every step of the way. She made a mild run to mid-stretch and then flattened out at the end. She is a horse that when she's good, she can produce some brilliant victories, but when she's not good, she's not going to be competitive in a race like this.
Yeah, exactly. That you've summed it up perfectly. Again, I don't like the 3-year-old fillies overall, but this is one that I do like. I mean, she's got a couple of races that I could really get behind. And I just want them to be more aggressive in this spot. Like you, I just thought she got a terrible ride in the Cotillion, and I'm willing to be a little bit lenient for that performance, especially in light of her prior race up at Saratoga, where she was just lights out in fast time.
You know the thrill of picking a winner. But instead of just running to the window for a quick payout, I play smarter. I invest with Morningline. Morningline is a more sophisticated way to use your skill and bankroll without putting it all at risk. Build your stable. When they race, you earn. Buy, sell, trade, anytime. Keep the action rolling without burning your bankroll. This is Playing the Ponies, elevated like a boss. Morning Line. Own the game.
The number 6, Alice Verite, is a Japanese contender coming back to the U.S. to try the Breeders' Cup Distaff once again. And Mike, the Distaff last year was her only ever start on the dirt, and she actually handled it pretty well. I would say better than the turf in Japan, because her turf form in Japan was not great coming into last year's Breeders' Cup Distaff. And interestingly, they tried out a totally different running style, because she had been a runoff speed horse in the 2024 season in Japan on the turf. She didn't break that well in the Breeders' Cup Distaff. They took her back early. That was a race that totally held together on the front end. There was no closing going on, and she was actually finishing best of all across the wire if you watch the replay of that race. So I feel like she handled the dirt. She has plenty of dirt in her pedigree if you go to the bottom side. Coming back for her 5-year-old season in Japan, it's been up and down. She actually ran really well in that Grade 1 Victoria Mile 2 back. She ran off on the front end, just got run down in the late stages. I don't think she's going to be a speed in this race, but she showed that she handles the dirt last year, and maybe she flies under the radar once again.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we'll see if she can run as well this year as she did last year, because I'm with you. I feel like she sort of ran a deceptively good race in the Distaff last year. You know, I don't know what it all means necessarily, and I'm not sure that, she's necessarily that good of a horse. But she's going to be a big price in this race. And it's just one of those races where it's hard to get behind the bigger prices. Maybe she's one you can sort of try to get in there somewhere.
The number 7, Jin Jin, she was the upset winner of the Spinster. We'll take a look at the replay of that race. And Mike, she got a good trip on the front end. Unfortunately, the Breeders' Cup Distaff is not going to be run at Keeneland this year, because I think that would please her connections. Jin Jin has run 2 races at Keeneland this season where she has posted upset victories in the Double Dog Dare and last time out in the Spinster. Her surrounding races are not nearly up to that level. You could see Nitrogen closing after on the outside, and she is just drifting and drifting through the stretch. That is Scylla staying on at one pace for third. As Mike said, they were all getting tired to the wire, and Jin Jin just won the war of attrition to the end. Mike, with Seismic Beauty drawn right outside of her, I have trouble seeing Jin Jin working out a winning trip here.
Exactly. I just don't think she's going to get the trip that she probably wants, which is to sort of be involved early and see how far she can take these horses. Good for them. Good for connections. They got a Grade 1 win for her last time in the Spinster, and I'm sure they're very happy with that. I'm not betting her back in the Distaff off of that performance.
Up next is the one to beat, the number 8, Seismic Beauty. She is an absolute standout on speed figures in a race where most of the fillies and mares are struggling to earn one triple-digit buyer. She's got a couple of triple-digit buyers coming in here, a 104 and a 110 last time out in the Clement L. Hirsch. We'll take a look at the stretch run of the race, where she beats a very good rival in Copia, and probably one that doesn't really want to go 2 turns on the dirt, but still, Seismic Beauty was able to soundly defeat her in here. Mike, if I'm going to knock this favorite, my knock against her would be that while she set legitimate paces, it's been very clear in really her last 3 route races that when she was lined up against other Baffert stablemates, those Baffert stablemates were in there and instructed not to go after her early and just let this horse get very comfortable leads for her. And I am not as confident that's going to happen in this large field where others just have to send out of the gate. And I wonder if a more competitive pace might expose her a little bit.
It's the one thing that I would worry about with her too, especially at the price that she figures to be. I guess the flip side of that is she is undefeated since Baffert stretched her out. She's a standout on speed figures. She's probably the main speed, even if she has to go a little bit faster. And then you add in the fact that this is just a totally depleted Distaff division with just no real top horses for her to have to deal with. I mean, maybe she won't win this race, David, but she deserves to be a pretty short price.
The 9, Majestic Oops, she is a big price in this race. She's coming off a disappointing effort last time in the Delaware Handicap. It was a pretty fast-paced race. She was up close to it, just got tired at the end. But Mike, even her best races going back to Monmouth this summer, they don't quite make her good enough to win at this level.
Just didn't think she was good enough to win here. I do respect the fact that she's pretty consistent, and I do think she can get the right trip in here, but I couldn't buy into her even at a big price.
The number 10, Gunsong, she's coming off a victory in the Beldame where she got back to the winner's circle in a graded stakes race, but it was not the strongest edition of the Beldame and only got an 87 buyer. And Mike, even going back to the end of her 3-year-old season when she ran the best race of her career, making it close with Torpedo Anna, even that performance probably not fast enough to win a race like the Breeders' Cup Distaff.
Yeah, that's the thing. We've seen plenty of Gunsong. She's just not fast enough. It doesn't seem like to win a race like this. Got back on track a little bit last time, but there were only 3 other horses in that race, and it didn't come back a fast race. I found it hard to get behind her in here.
The number 11, Dry Powder, she is the last of that trio that is exiting the cotillion. And she was pretty game, battling the back on the inside all the way to the wire, Mike. I mean, she pressed the pace early, was still there at the end, and she definitely has improved since early in the year. Didn't get the best ride. I think her connections were displeased with the ride in the Coaching Club American Oaks, where she was not aggressively ridden. But from post 11, she could be a sneaky speed in this race because she almost has to go forward to have a chance at here. And when she's in the mix, she does fight it out.
Exactly. I was just going to say the same thing. I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, I do think she'll be right up close in this race, and she does really like to fight for races in the stretch if she can get herself involved. Still remember that race at Aqueduct back in the summer. She took a tough beat in that Wilton there. She was really good that day. A little bit underrated. This might be a little bit out of reach for her, especially if she has to go forward and race the favorite around the track. I don't know how that's going to work out for her, but she's another 3-year-old filly who could really be in line to take a step forward next year.
The number 12, Dorth Vader, she gave Torpedo Anna all that she could handle last time in the personal ensign at Saratoga, where those two dueled from the quarter pole home and drew well clear of the rest of the field. We'll take a look at the stretch run of that personal ensign, Mike. And if she runs this well back in this distaff, she's going to be competitive with Seismic Beauty and maybe is one of the horses to beat in this race. The problem is that she's drawn all the way outside in 12 of 13. And Mike, you might remember, I mean, I liked her in this personal ensign. And the case that I made coming into this race was I thought she got the wrong trip in the Molly Pitcher, where she had to be used early to press randomized and was basically traveling with no cover. When you watch all of her best races, the Ogden Phipps, the personal ensign, the La Trienne, it's when they've gotten her covered up and settled early, and then she makes that run around the far turn to get into contention. And I just worry that they're not going to have the opportunity to get her shut off early in this race, given the outside post that she drew.
Yeah, exactly. And if that's the trip that they want, they might wind up having to take her all the way back and leave her with an awful lot to do in the stretch. Her form right now, in particular, the 2 really good grade 1 efforts at Saratoga going this distance in the summer. I mean, those races are going to give her a chance in here. It's all about what kind of trip she can work out.
And drawn on the far outside is the number 13, Regaled. I don't think the post matters too much for this filly, Mike, because she has no early speed. She's going to drop back and make one run, hoping this race falls apart. And that's basically what happened last time in the Delaware Handicap, where they went really fast up front. She sat way off the pace, made a big run to win going away. That was against a much weaker field than this one, but she is coming into this race in the best form of her career.
Yeah, that's what I like about her. I mean, I do think, particularly since the trainer change in the summer, she's just gotten way better. Those first 2 starts for Beckman are races where she had 0 pace to run into, and she actually ran really well both times. She finally caught some pace to come after last time, and she steamrolled that field through the stretch going this distance. That was probably the time to have her. She was actually a really fair price, and you knew the race was going to set up for her. But I don't know, man. I like the form that she's in here. They're just going to take her back and try to make one run. And as you were already pointing out when we talked about the favorite, there's a chance this pace does get pretty competitive up front. So maybe she'll have something to run at again at a price.
Well, before we get to picks in this Breeders' Cup Distaff, I want to let you in on a secret. Morning Line is a private SEC-regulated marketplace where approved participants can trade licensed interest in racing's biggest stars, like Torpedo Anna, unfortunately not in this Breeders' Cup Distaff, but we wish her well in retirement, and Derby hopeful Blackout Time. Be part of championship bloodlines. Visit morningline.io. Buy, sell, trade, own the game. Let's get to our picks for this Breeders' Cup Distaff. And Mike, I see you put the favorite Seismic Beauty on top. She is squarely the one to beat. It's just really a matter of how short a price you want to take on her, given the figure advantage.
Yeah, exactly. I looked at this race probably longer than I wanted to, David, and I couldn't talk myself into anybody else. And I'm gonna settle for the favorite, whether I like it or not. I just think it's a good spot for her. I got Regaled in there just at a bigger price, hoping she can come and pick up some pieces. I do not expect her to win this race. And I also wanted to use a little Scottish Lassie. I had Scottish Lassie on top for a long time in here. I'm hoping she runs better with a different trip this time.
Yeah, I was just kind of displeased with a lot of the options in this race, Mike. I decided I was going to be against Seismic Beauty at a short price. I think Dorothy Vader is kind of a more reliable option, but I hate the post for her. I've got her in there. I want to use the Japanese horse, Alice Verite. She'll be on some of my tickets, but I put the number 4 Scylla on top. I think she's just fine going this distance. I don't love the spinster at a race, but I could see her really tripping out in here if the pace develops, and she's probably a horse that is going to get ignored on the tote board. So 4, 12, 6, 8 for me, and 8, 13, 5, 12 for Mike in race 7 on Breeders' Cup Saturday. It's the Distaff. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.